Okay, thank God we're back together again. You ready for this? You excited? We're gonna have to think a little deeply, okay? This is Likutey Moharan. This is not a joke. If everybody who's a participant can just keep themselves on mute for the sake of everybody else in the class, that would be great. And then at the end, we're gonna get questions. You come back in, okay? Thank you. Okay. So far like this. Rabbi Nachman is teaching us that the essence of life, of this world, and even the next one, is to expand. It's to grow, to continue to grow. And the way that you grow is through this process that's called teshuvah. Often when we think about teshuvah, we think about beating our chest. We think about saying we're sorry and admitting things that we have struggled with. And there's a place for all that. But according to Kabbalah and according to Chassidut, teshuvah is much, much deeper than that. Teshuvah is literally the energy. It is the dynamic which is pushing everything in creation forward. Continuous growth, continuous expansion, because before Hashem created the world, there was only Hashem. And Hashem says, I don't change. But if Hashem doesn't change, and this is very deep, so think about it for a second. If Hashem doesn't change, that means he's limited. Right? Why is he limited? Because that means he can't change. But Hashem's not limited. So what did Hashem do? He created a universe in which there can be change. Just so you can't say he can't change. But how is he changing here? He's changing through us. So on some level, teshuvah is part of his perfection. Because prior to existence of this universe, specifically when it was just him, there can't be teshuvah. There can't be change. There can't be dynamics. There can't be movement because it's only Hashem. But Hashem is everything and he's capable of everything. So too, can you say that Hashem can get better? So no, he can't get better. He's perfect. But if he can't get better, so he's limited. So he made a world so he can get better. So you can't say he can't get better. How does he do it? He does it through us. And this goes for everything that we think is part of our difficulties or our lackings, is really paradoxically a part of Hashem's perfection. Because all of those things that you would say Hashem can't do or he doesn't do, he takes care of them by creating us. And now there's nowhere that he's lacking, including if you say, can Hashem have lackings? You would say, no, he can't have lackings. He's perfect. But now you're limiting him. So how does Hashem have lackings? Through us. So all of our seeming limitations and the cause of our suffering in our life is really what makes Hashem perfect.
Helps change the person.
And this is the deeper reason why Hashem says that a person who has a broken heart, I never push him away. Why? Because our broken heart is part of Hashem's perfection. And that's teshuvah. Now Rabbi Nachman says the best way to do teshuvah is to do teshuvah al teshuvah. Not to, so to speak, one day say, you know what, I lived a life like this. I want to change now. I'm going to start to grow. And then that's it. It should be teshuvah al teshuvah al teshuvah. Because despite what we think that kind of this life is a series of days and every day leads into the next day and therefore it's one long life. According to Kabbalah, according to Chassidut, every moment is actually frozen. Meaning that once you have a moment, that moment goes up. And that moment's now waiting for you in Olam Haba. So to speak, if you can imagine like a movie where every time that somebody moves, there's like a screenshot, and then the next the screenshot, and all of those screenshots go up. That's why it said that Avram Avinu, at the end of his life, he had length of days. What do you mean he had length of days? He was old. Just say he was old, which they did say he got old. Then they said he had length of days, meaning to say that what got him Olam Haba was that each day was a snapshot in and of itself. And each of those snapshots accumulate and become one's Olam Haba. So that's Teshuvah al Teshuvah, that it's a nonstop process of taking advantage of the moment, of living Hayom, of doing the best that you can with every moment that you have, and not saying this is just another moment. And this is actually connected to the Keter, which is the highest part of a Jewish soul. That when a Jew is constantly working on growing, he's connected to the crown of his own soul, the highest part of his own soul. But the whole essence of Teshuvah, the whole essence of Keter, is paradoxically waiting. That you would think that the highest part of the soul would be being, I'm existing, and things are the way they should be. But the highest part of the soul is called waiting. And this is why you see that in all of the stories in the Torah where there's an error being made, Rabbi Nachman says there's one common denominator amongst every error that's made in the Torah by the greatest people ever lived. One thing that was common about all of them, whether it was Moshe striking the rock and not getting into the land of Israel, whether it was Aaron making and helping and assisting, so to speak, with the golden calf instead of waiting another moment, whether it was David HaMelech seeing a beautiful woman and acting on it instead of waiting a moment, whether it was Adam Rishon when he could have just waited until Shabbat, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And what does everybody understand is that one common denominator? Waiting. They couldn't wait. Couldn't wait. So what we're learning here is that in truth, you see that the highest thing in the world is called waiting. Because the greatest people who ever lived, their one error in their life came from their inability to do this. So to speak, what makes Mashiach different or greater even than the patriarchs, even greater than Moshe Rabbeinu, is his capacity to wait. And I'll tell you something that's very interesting that I thought about. The Torah says all the time how much HaShem can't take when we suffer, because it's his suffering is your suffering. That Rabbi Nachman actually says when a Jew cries because he's in pain, those tears are actually Hashem's tears. He's just crying through you, which is very deep. And Rabbi Nachman actually says there's something amazing, that he's allowing you to enter into his space, that there's no way for him to communicate to you how he feels. So he makes you feel how he feels. And then by doing that, now you're part of his group, his crew, of special, unique people who are part of his special group of friends.
Question. So let's say somebody's family member passes.
Yeah.
Hashem is sad to the fact that he has to take them at that moment. So he's going through us to have us shed tears for them. How does that work?
So in that case, I don't know that Hashem is upset to take somebody, because this world is very difficult and the place where they're going is not. I think the only suffering that he would have is those who are left behind, because we're in pain, because we don't know what's next. And so he's in pain for us. And the essence is that it's when you're trying to do the right thing and you're still struggling. That's when Hashem, so to speak, is allowing you into his world. And the Jewish people are the Shekhinah of Hashem. We are the revelation of godliness in this world. So as a result of that, when it says, why does it mean that the Shekhinah is crying? Just look around. It's us. So now if you think about it, with that being the case, And the fact that, let's say, for instance, we know Yosef Hatzadik, that when he had the dream about how he would bring, so to speak, the Geula, and his father Yaakov, it said that he was shomer, that he was safeguarding that. So Rashi says, what does it mean? It means he was waiting for it to come true, even though he rebuked him in front of his brothers because he didn't want them to get jealous. But the Torah says that he was actually waiting because he did believe it would happen. Now we know that Yaakov Avinu is, so to speak, the manifestation in this situation of HaShem, that HaShem is waiting for redemption. How long has HaShem been waiting for redemption? Since before the creation. We know that HaShem created the Mashiach, the soul of the Mashiach, even before he created the universe. It's one of the 6 things that the Midrash says that HaShem created first. So that means that even before he created the universe, and not just the 6,000 years, there's many worlds before this. From that point until now, Hashem has been waiting just to give us this experience of Geula. You know how long that is? That's a very long time.
So what's the whole point of this whole thing?
What's the whole point of what we're talking about?
No, so what's the whole point of like the world being created and this and that and
That
suffering and Geula and
right. So the Ramchal says the point of this
we're just
world
sitting running around.
is that Hashem wants to give you all of the good. But the Ramchal says it's a problem though, because if he wants to give us all the good, he says, I'm looking around and it can't be that it's here. So where is it?
But he knew all this already.
1 second. And the answer is that it's not here. The place where all the good is called Olam Haba. That's where he's going to give it to you. So then what's the point of this place? So the Ramchal says, like the Gemara says, this is the corridor to the wedding hall. You need to pass through here to get to the wedding hall, right? Can you
Also, that's what I mean, that we're going to have Yativ Lanu is going to be over there.
Yeah. So that's why people who try and make this world their vacation, so to speak, that's why they're never able to succeed. That's why no matter how hard a person tries to become financially stable and healthy and on and on to make this world, so to speak, his banya, so he can't, because this world is a corridor. Can you imagine you walk into a wedding hall, which you guys do every single night for some reason, and all of a sudden you're in the corridor and you're like, wow, where's the party? This wedding sucks, you know? So too, but you need that wedding, you need the wedding hall, you need the corridor, it brings you there. Now, if you know that the whole reason for being in the corridor is because ultimately it's going to bring you to the wedding hall, then the corridor actually becomes exciting. But if you mistake the corridor for the wedding hall, then the corridor becomes Gehenna, right? It becomes hell. So everything is about perspective. Now, Rabbi Nachman and the Baal Shem Tov, their chiddush is that while the Ramchal, what he's saying is true, the Arizal says that Olam Haba means the world that's constantly coming. It doesn't mean the world that will come in the future. It means it's existing parallel to this Olam Hazeh, and it's here right now. It's Olam Haba, it's coming. So where is it? It's whoever makes a space for it. And in that way, you can be in this physical world in Olam Hazeh, which is the corridor, and at the very same time, you could be in Olam Haba. And this is the whole entire chap of the Baal Shem Tov, and this is why his Torah is messianic, and that's why all of his students, their Torah is messianic, because they're giving you an experience of Geula even before it happens. That your feet are down in Olam Hazeh, but your head is in Olam Haba. Okay? For you to do that, you need to wait. This is what we're learning. So Hashem obviously is very great at waiting. Also, the Mashiach is also very great at waiting, because we know and we hear stories about him even in the Gemara, that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi went to go to Mashiach and said, when are you coming? So he knew even 2,000 years ago that everybody's waiting for him. And he's still not coming. Why? Because he's able to wait. He likes to wait. I remember when I was in sleepaway camp. You guys don't do that, right? He definitely did it, but you guys do. Okay. You did that. Okay. So for 3 months, I went to a camp. And like no technology, whatever, you play, you hang out, X, Y, and Z. And I was a really big professional wrestling fan, like obsessed. So I used to watch every single episode of Monday Night Raw, Thursday Night SmackDown, and the pay-per-views. I'd invite all my friends over, and then when my friends became less, I only invited those people over, and then it became less. I had like the one guy, and then eventually it was like me with my popcorn. But always watching wrestling, I really like. I was enthralled by it. Okay. Now, interestingly, most people who are like me, when they went to camp or whatever, they did something else. They would just look up the results online. What happened in the event, right? If you're going to be away for 3 months, just like a sports event, you would just look up what happened. So I didn't want to, because I wanted to see it. But if I want to see it, then it would take 3 months for me to see anything. And how am I going to see it? So I begged my dad that he should tape every single event on videotape. And then at the end of the summer, I would come back and watch 3 months worth of wrestling. And I would never go online to find out what happened. And I would never ask anybody about it. And I would make sure I would do everything I can to make sure I didn't know. Because for me, the greatest thing in the world would be to come back after 3 months, go in my parents' bedroom, turn off the lights, have popcorn, and just watch hours and hours and hours of wrestling from the beginning of the 3 months until the end of the 3 months. And when I was done, I would come out of the Batcave. Why am I telling you that? Not just to embarrass myself, but also because I like waiting for things. I like waiting for good things. I like waiting for good things. So this concept of waiting for a good thing, so too Hashem likes to wait for good things. And even though we're scrambling because we don't like to wait, because we're not patient, because patience comes from the highest level of the soul, we haven't acquired that level yet. But if we can somehow work on our emunah, then we can enjoy the ride while we're waiting. And Rabbi Nachman says you can even experience it like it's already here. Like Rav Natan constantly says about Avram Avinu, that he used to look at the Har Bayit. He said it used to look from afar. That was the pasuk. It said that Abraham looked from afar. Why was he looking from afar even before he got there? Because he was living with the experience of the Har Bayit even before it came to him. Because if he knows for sure 100% Hashem's going to bring him there, then really what's the difference between then and now if I already know it's part of my ultimate reality? So too, Rabbi Nachman saying the same thing. You're struggling in life, think about the future. But think about it so much that it becomes your present. Constantly think about the good that's coming to you in every area of your life, whether it be the things you're looking forward to, whether it be Olam Haba, whether it be all the good, overcoming all of your difficulties and then transforming into good. And even before it happens, live like it is, because it will.
How would you know if you wait for something you don't know? You wouldn't know how long you have to wait for.
Doesn't make a difference.
You're saying being patient. Are there steps you're taking as well towards that goal?
Rabbi Nachman says that the only way for a Jew to acquire patience is to pray to live in the land of Israel. That the way to explain that is too much for right now in this lesson, and it's not going to be connected to what we're saying.
Can you repeat that again?
Rabbi Nachman says in the Likutey Moharan that the only way for a Jew to acquire this thing that's called patience is to pray to be living in the land of Israel.
By living in the land of Israel, you understand what patience is.
By praying and yearning to live in the land of Israel constantly, Rabbi Nachman says a Jew can acquire patience. Okay, so Bezrat Hashem, when we get there, we'll find out what that means. Okay, now teshuva al teshuva. What is the ikar of teshuva? Rabbi Nachman says, if somebody insults you and you don't respond, that's another thing. That's a Sephardi thing, but let's stay away from that for a second. You have somebody says something, you don't respond. Rabbi Nachman says you're quiet and you're silent. Why do you need to use both? Because he's saying that not only are you not responding, but the highest level would be that you don't actually feel anything from it in your heart. And if a person ever gets to this point, he has reached the highest level of teshuva. Along the way, you're only going to be able to be quiet, if that. That is, I don't respond, but I still feel in my heart. Okay? And then ultimately to get to this highest level. When you get to the highest level that you don't respond and you don't respond, then you have attained what's called kavod elokim. You have reached the highest madrega of spirituality. You have reached the keter of the soul because you have completely nullified your ego. And then you become a pure manifestation and vehicle for the light of the Ein Sof, for the light of godliness. Okay. Now, Rabbi Nachman says like this: what we're learning right now, this is all the concept of Olam Haba. What does Olam Haba have to do with this? Shiyeh Kulo Shabbat. Because we know that the sages say that Olam Haba is completely Shabbat. We're waiting for Shabbos. Very good. So what's the reason that we have Shabbat every week? Just to remind us of the paradigm of life. That is, that the 6 days of the week is this world that we live in. And ultimately, never to forget that the only reason for the 6 days is the 7th. That our entire purpose for going through the 6 days is that we're gearing up for the 7th day. All the 6 days is a mitzvah to remember Shabbat. Rabbi Nachman says, what does that mean? It's a mitzvah to remember Shabbat. It means literally to live with Shabbat even during the week. And by doing that, you draw down Shabbat here, and you get to experience this world as peaceful like it will be there, by living with that same state of consciousness. Shiyeh Kul Shabbat, because that world of Olam Haba is going to be completely peaceful. It's going to be completely Shabbat, meaning Hainu Kulo Tshuva, meaning it's going to be complete Teshuvah. Because what is it that causes a person a lack of peace? Disconnection from Hashem. And the more connected that a person is to Hashem, and the less he's invested in his own ego, the more peace that he has. Right? Who has the least amount of peace in the world? The angriest guy in the world. Why does he have the least peace? Because he's very angry. Why is he angry? Because Rabbi Nachman says that it's all rooted in his ego. The more invested a person is in an ego, the more he will get angry. And therefore he has no peace. So what is teshuvah? Teshuvah is bridging the gap between you and Hashem. I'm returning to the root of my soul. I'm returning to the makor, to the wellspring from which I've been drawn from. And as a result of that, that's complete peace. This is the reason when you see real tzaddikim, they're always in a state of peace. For them, it looks like they're always in Shabbat. And the Hasidic masters say, literally, it's like Shabbat. That the experience that we have on Shabbat, that we feel peaceful, but during the week it feels crazy. So for real tzaddikim, our Shabbats are like their weekdays. And their Shabbat is like something that we can't fathom.
They have a high experience of Shabbat.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
I want to say that you said that the world itself becomes new. So I was thinking that since a person is waking up every single day as a new person, I was thinking that since the world rotates, it constantly changes.
Beautiful. Very good. For anyone who didn't hear, Gabby was making a correlation between man and the world, which we know that the sages say that every person is an olam katan, he's a small world. So he's saying that just like we wake up in the morning and the Torah teaches us that we're brand new and we need to revitalize, we need to renew ourselves, we need to grow and change. He says it's like the world, that it's constantly rotating. Beautiful. Love it. If Benny's watching, I'm sure he's going to like that a lot too. Hopefully Alex does as well. Like the Pasuk says, Shikatuv, V'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha. The Pasuk says, then you're going to return to Hashem your God. Meaning what? This Pasuk is a place in Devarim where Hashem said that in the future, it says specifically at the end of days, this is where that concept comes from, where that terminology comes from, the end of days, that there really is such a concept of there's an end of time. And he says at the end of days, you are going to be struggling tremendously because I'm going to be hiding completely. And the reason I'm doing it, it comes at the end of the Pasuk. It says, because through that experience of me hiding from you, V'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha, then you will return to Hashem your God. Because it's the impetus, it's the motivation for returning is when there is complete tohu, when there's complete emptiness, when there's complete chaos, when there's a huge void. And he's saying then those people who are scattered across the world, which it says explicitly, which at the time you would never imagine because the Jews were all in one place and now we're all across the world, says then at the end, they're all going to return to me. Just speak about right now. But he says, what's the lashon v'shavta? You're going to return ki ikar olam haba, because the essence of olam haba hu hasagat elukuto. Because the essence of olam haba, the essence of the world to come, that the Arizal says it's constantly coming, is higher perceptions, increased perceptions, higher sensitivity, increased revelation of pure godliness. So Rabbi Nachman saying like this: if olam haba is completely Shabbat, right? It's kulo tov, it's kulo Shabbat. What is the essence of Shabbat? I'm returning to Hashem. Every moment and every experience of me returning to Hashem, the proof of that is I have a greater revelation of Him. Because, so to speak, what Hashem did was we were with Him as one. We said we don't feel like we earned it. That's one understanding. And therefore we ask that we should be able to experience that. But the other deeper understanding is that while we're part of Him, we have no individual capability to actually experience Him in a conscious way. Because if you're a part of something, if you're enmeshed in something, if you're one with something, you have no personal individual perspective or experience of it because you're one. So what did Hashem do? He took all of our souls and He enclosed them in physical bodies. He sent them down to a completely physical world. And if you could imagine, so to speak, just for the sake of a mashal, let's say that He threw us down a ladder, and at each stage of the ladder, you have an experience of Hashem, okay? At the bottom of the ladder, with 100 steps, you're now 100, so to speak, steps away from pure revelation of Hashem, because you've been thrown 100 steps down. But now, let's say you take one step up. You do one act of teshuvah. And now you have a greater revelation of godliness in your world, a more true, a more genuine perspective of Hashem that you didn't have previous to that. That is actually like climbing up one step. So in truth, the reason why you're having a higher revelation is not because Hashem is just dumping it onto you. It's because you're taking one step closer to Him. And every step that you will take closer to Him, the more you're going to be able to see Him. So what is Olam Haba? You went up all 100 steps. And now you have done complete teshuvah, because teshuvah means to return. So what's the connection between teshuvah and perceptions of godliness? I thought teshuvah is an act of me trying to change and transform. But the ikar, the essence of the transformation, is that you take one step closer. And with every step closer that you take, you're going to experience a higher revelation of godliness than you had previous. Now, like the Baal Shem Tov teaches, to get up a ladder, though, it's in the Gemara as well, Masechet Makot, you have to first step down in order to have the leverage to get up to the next step. And that's the reason why there's always a fall that precedes the ascent. That the Baal Shem Tov teaches that every aliyah requires a yerida first. And that's why Rabbi Nachman used to admonish his students and let them know, by the way, when they're coming and saying, I don't know why I keep falling back into my old bad habits. I don't know why I can't change for good. I don't know why for a few days I really feel like I figured it out. And the next day it's like nothing ever happened. And they came to him in complete yayush. And he said, why are you upset? You're growing. No, I'm not growing. I'm not doing anything. I thought I was, but nothing actually happened. He said, no, you have to go down with your feet. And then with that, you're going to be able to take another step. You're actually growing. You're going to the next stage. You're doing higher levels of teshuvah. Kamosh Katuv, like the pasuk says, "V'yiduoti v'mikatanam va'ad gedolim." Gedolam, sorry. And it says, therefore, Yirmiyah says, they will know me from the least of them to the greatest. So the simple shot of this is that at the end, when Mashiach comes and the Geula comes, everyone's going to know Hashem, meaning everybody is going to intimately experience the oneness, the complete perfect unity of godliness of Hashem. However, Rav Kramer on the bottom explains what is the deep secret that Rabbi Nachman is trying to allude to. If Olam Haba is all your perspectives of godliness, your perceptions of godliness, so what does it mean that then you're going to know me from the smallest to the greatest? He's saying like this, that it's not talking about people, it's talking about your perception. That from the smallest of your perception, when you first recognized Hashem in your life, until the greatest of your perceptions, when you reach the highest perception of godliness in your life, you will know Hashem in all of those places. Everybody with me? It's a little deep. Meaning to say that let's say a few years ago, you did teshuvah, you realized that Hashem existed. Something happened in your life. I don't know, you had an experience. Something happened with a friend, something happened with yourself. You got into an accident, chas v'shalom. Something happened to your family. Everybody has their own initial experience of Hashem. Somebody has a miracle, whatever. That first experience is called teshuvah. But that's called miktanam. That was the smallest revelation of godliness you ever had, because you haven't actually done anything to prepare to experience him in a real way. Now what happens after that? Now you try and grow close, but you struggle. But then after some of that struggle, you then have a higher perception of godliness than you had before because you worked for it. So now you had a higher, and it goes higher and higher and higher. Why did Hashem put me in all those places? Because the whole ikar, and this is the big secret of why Hashem puts us into difficult situations, is because ultimately the essence of a Jew, like Rabbi Nachman says in the first Torah of Likutey Moharan, is to reveal Hashem in every place. And when we usually think about every place, we think about Los Angeles, we think about New York, we think about Israel. That's true, but that's not really what it's talking about. Every place means every mental, emotional space. That the reason why Hashem sends you to these different places in your life, and you didn't expect it, and you don't know why it's happening, there's only one reason. Hashem wants you to reveal him there. So why do I keep going through these difficulties? Because that's another place that Hashem needs to be revealed. And only you're capable of doing so. And that's why you're the one who's sent there. Like it said about David HaMelech, where did Hashem find him? He found him in stone. Why would he find him in stone? Because he needed to reveal Hashem even in a place that was very, very, very dark. And only David was capable of that.
It's not for me, Samara. I sent you to that place.
They work hand in hand.
You found him in the cave.
The Torah says, and Chazal teach, that the Yetzer Hara is called a malach. He's an angel. What do you mean? I thought he's the cause of all of the difficulties and challenges in my life. He's also the cause of you becoming a hero, because he is your Ezer Kenegdo. He's the force which is working against you. Now on paper, if you leave it at that, so yeah, for sure, he's horrible. But if you realize, in fact, that all of your growth has taken place because of his putting the pressure on you and giving you challenges and obstacles in your life, like a trainer, somebody said, right, like a trainer. So then ultimately you'll see, and the Kabbalists explain that we're going to thank him at the end of our life. Because all of the perceptions of godliness which took place and all of the real achievement which we earned only came via the Yetzer Hara. Okay? It's like in those movies, when there's like a twist at the end. The whole time it looks like this guy's the bad guy. And then all of a sudden you realize he actually works for your dad, the one who seemingly was with you the whole time. You know what I'm talking about? Those crazy movies like that. It's like that. At the end, this thing which is giving us problems our whole entire life is going to bless us. You know where we have this experience in the Torah? Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu is fighting with the Sar of Esav his whole life. He's fighting with the Malach of Esav, the force of negativity, of struggle, of challenge his whole entire life. And ultimately, he finally wins. Now, you think that when he wins, that entity which he was fighting against would just scamper off. He would run away. But what ends up happening? He says, you did good. You wrestled with God and you won. Guess what? You have a new name now, Yisrael. That as opposed to Yaakov, where Yaakov comes from the root word Ekev, which means the heel. Now you're Yisrael. If you flip the letters around, it's Roshli. It's my head. So you went from the heel to the head. How did you go from the heel to the head? Because of Esav. And he switches gears. Also, like Yaakov, his whole life, he's fighting with Esav. And at the end, they hug each other.
So why is it going to be burned at the end?
There's an element of him that's going to be. But according to Chassidut and Kabbalah, he'll do tshuva as well. and the Mashiach is gonna have everybody come back to Hashem.
Rabbi, so why is it gonna be destroyed?
Oh no, Daniel, 1 second before you get into all this stuff. Give me a second. Let me continue. We're gonna get to questions at the end. Sorry.
It's exclusive only.
I know where that's going. Okay. Therefore, what does it mean from the smallest to the greatest? Meaning from the smallest to the greatest of your perceptions, that's going to be your Olam Haba. Your Olam Haba is going to be every perception of godliness you ever had here, magnified, expanded, times infinitude. So from the smallest to the greatest, that's what you're going to experience in Olam Haba. That's Shabbat. And this is like our sages said, every person that he slaughters his own Yetzer Hara, that he shechs him, that he slaughters the part of him which is dragging him down, which is causing him frustration, difficulties, challenges, maybe distractions on the phone, anything possible. Okay? Now, there's a pasuk which the Gemara from Masechet Sanhedrin says, whoever slaughters his Yetzer Hara and then afterwards he does teshuvah, it says, it's as if he honored Hashem in two olamot, in two worlds, Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba.
If he fought his Yetzer Hara? If you fought his and then
He slaughters him. You got to slaughter him. You can't just fight him. Yeah, you fight him, but then ultimately you slaughter him, you know, like you take the...
So I'm gonna slaughter my friend that helped me.
Okay, Daniel, take it easy over here. 1 second. We just learned before that the key and the highest part of the soul is called waiting and patience. So the way you slaughter your Yetzer Hara, Rabbi Nachman says, by waiting. So try and practice now. Everybody, let's do it. You ready? Good. Okay. So like this, you honor Hashem in two worlds. Like David HaMelech says at the end of his life, V'libi chalal b'kirbi. My heart is now empty within me, meaning I've finally slaughtered my Yetzer Hara. B'china dom la'Hashem. Like Rabbi Nachman's teaching, that the proof that a person has slaughtered his Yetzer Hara, which is really just your own ego, is if when somebody insults me, I don't say, Ma pitom, what are you? Or I don't scream back. Or I don't even make a face. I'm silent. Rabbi Nachman says, if I could be silent when somebody embarrasses me or somebody insults me, that means you have done teshuvah. And if you're not just silent with your mouth, but you can actually not feel anything in your heart, then Rabbi Nachman says you have accomplished teshuvah al teshuvah, meaning you have achieved teshuvah in this world and the next one, the highest aspect of teshuvah. And then you have achieved kavod, you have achieved the keter. This is the crown of the soul, to be able to do this. Umitvadeh alav. And then afterwards, that you realize and you had a higher perception of godliness, shemitvadeh al zavichad yitzro. Then even though you slaughtered your Yetzer Hara, you still go back and you do vidui on it. You still go back and you speak about the challenges that you had, that even though they came from the Yetzer Hara, you're still doing vidui on it after you slaughter it. So if you slaughter it and then you do vidui, you've achieved both levels. And this is the highest thing. And Rav Natan says, obviously, only the greatest tzaddikim who ever lived ultimately get to accomplish both in full. But everybody on their own level can do it to their own bechina, to their own root of their soul. Meaning, what are you doing teshuvah on? You're doing teshuvah on your first perception of Hashem. Like for instance, let's say Mike, he starts doing teshuvah, and all of a sudden, how does he start doing teshuvah? Because he learns about Hashem from his local Sephardic rabbi. And all of a sudden, he realizes Hashem exists. So he has a perception. Now, all of a sudden, he goes through a difficulty, a challenge in his life. All of a sudden, he can't get help from anywhere. He's looking around for help. There is no help to have. And the perception of godliness, which was given to him by this rabbi, is not enough for him to heal. Now he's going to have to find a deeper perception of godliness. And where does he find it? Rabbi Nachman, Rabbi Nachman, right? He finds it from Rabbi Nachman. And now what happens? He realized that that first perception he had, even though that was greater than everything he had ever experienced, it's now like physical compared to this perception he now has, which is spiritual. And so too, that's going to happen again. And it's going to happen again. And so what does Rabbi Nachman say we should be doing teshuvah on? Not just mistakes that we've made, but ultimately perceptions that we had that were weak or faulty or not completely whole. An example, like for instance,
Like if you see someone angry, I can give them some.
oh, go ahead. I like the way I got you. Okay, go ahead.
Person doesn't put on tefillin.
Okay.
He's taught to put on tefillin, and he's taught if you don't put it on, it's a big avera.
Right.
So you don't want to have an avera, so you start putting it on every day. And you do teshuvah for all the times you didn't put it on.
Right.
Then you come and learn that it's also considered the higher mochim,
Right.
all the constrictions and the receiving the higher whatever.
Right.
And it's actually, it's like a higher level of wisdom that you're connecting to. So now you want to put it on because you want to connect to a higher level of wisdom.
Right.
So although before you were doing it was a mitzvah and you just didn't want to get punished, now you're also doing it. You move beyond the punish. Although that's still there, that's not even why you're doing it at this point. You're doing it because you wanted to bring out high levels of wisdom. So now you would do teshuvah on that.
Very good.
And then later you want to do it just because
A higher
you want to
reason.
serve HaShem and you have no desire even for a reward. You just want to do his mitzvot.
Beautiful.
Do teshuvah on that.
Very good. You hear that?
And although each level is a mitzvah and it's very, very holy,
Yeah.
when you enter a new level, the
Right.
previous level becomes like
Beautiful.
physicality compared to the new level now.
Beautiful. You got it? Understand? That's it. Thank you, Avram. You should do like a running commentary. You're like under all the places that David confuses everybody.
You explain things sometimes in ways I can never.
No. I'm just kidding. No, I'm happy.
You hit the nail on the head
No. I'm very, very happy. You should know. I'm very, very happy. This is a big thing. So that was the example. Okay. So now you're doing teshuvah on that past teshuvah. Ki'ilu kibdu le'kodesh baruch hu b'shnei olamot. And then it's like you have honored Hashem in two worlds, even while you're living here. Ki teshuvah rishona, because this first teshuvah b'china kavod olam hazeh. Because this first teshuvah is the concept of teshuvah only in olam hazeh. It's an olam hazeh dika type of teshuvah, but it's not the concept of olam haba type of teshuvah. But then all of a sudden he comes to the perceptions of godliness that come from Chassidut, that come from the Baal Shem Tov, that come from Rabbi Nachman, that come from the Arizal. And now all of a sudden he thinks about the original teshuvah that he did, and he's embarrassed by his perceptions of godliness that he had before. And he does teshuvah on that. And now he has teshuvah of Olam Haba and teshuvah of Olam Hazeh. Like I once heard while I was in Miami for the class with Gedalia. So I saw a Breslover Chassid who we actually saw when we were in Hanukkah time. And I think you were speaking to him over there. And I'm like, did I see you in Ukraine? And he's like, maybe. And he was Israeli. I think you were speaking to him. Very, very nice guy. Whatever. And I saw him doing Tikkun HaKlali, and I saw him pacing back and forth outside, saying Tikkun HaKlali. So I started speaking to him. And I asked him, I love to hear people's journeys, and I specifically love to hear about people's journeys to Rabbi Nachman, because for me it's always a trip. It's never like I don't know, my friend sent me to a class. It's always something crazy. Like my own personal experience and like most people's. So he said that I really feel that there's 3 levels of teshuvah, which is kind of connected to what we're learning now. He says first you realize Hashem exists if you have like the merit, right? And then you do teshuvah based on everything before that. But then you find the teachings of Chassidut, the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. And they're so great, and they're so unbelievable, and they're so unique, and they're so intimate, and they're so special. And they make you realize how great Hashem is and how much you want that in your life. And then you think about like when you first started doing it because of like the reasons you said, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was like so weak. And then you do teshuvah on that. And he says, and then if you have the schut, you find Rabbi Nachman. And then you realize that even whatever that was like pretty weak. And then you do teshuvah on everything. And then you've really done teshuvah. So anyway, I related to that. It resonated.
So it just seems the first level when it's happening feels like Mount Sinai.
That's the whole point.
It's crazy.
That's the whole point.
Forward, you're like, wow, that's
the whole point.
That was like kindergarten.
Exactly. Very good, Abraham. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's the whole entire point. Okay. And all of these perceptions that you're having all of these are going to be your schar and olam haba. And they're all going to accumulate and become called length of days. And that's going to be your whole entire experience there. And he says, this is called teshuvah al teshuvah. And this is what Rabbi Nachman says that he was busy with. Because the question is, how is Rabbi Nachman busy with doing teshuvah all the time? If on paper, he's the mikveh that cleans from all stains. So he's obviously not staining the waters as he's also cleaning everybody, right? So what type of teshuvah is he constantly doing? He's doing teshuvah on his perceptions, not on his actions. He got to the point that he's no longer making any type of errors at all. He's only doing teshuvah on his lacking perceptions from yesterday, that he realizes Hashem is much greater than he thought today than he was yesterday. And this is the meaning of the pasuk, says Rabbi Nachman, that's in Zachariah, that speaks about Yemot HaMashiach, according to Rashi, according to Matsuda David, something very interesting. The pasuk says, Or Yekarot V'Kipa On. On that day, there's going to be neither bright light nor thick darkness. Now, Rashi explains there's something amazing. What is it talking about? Saying that there's going to be trials and tribulations that take place right before the Mashiach comes. And because the trials and tribulations on every person individually that they know in their own heart and us collectively, those trials and tribulations are going to be, we're going to feel this must either be that the Mashiach is coming and the Geula is going to happen because it can't get worse than this, or that like we're just done. And because of that, the pasuk says it's going to be neither bright light nor thick darkness because we won't be able to know which one it is. But Zachariah is telling us that it's really Yemot HaMashiach is coming, which sounds very familiar to right now, by the way. If you think about the COVID virus, the corona, the keter, on the one hand, right, that's what corona means. On the one hand, this seems like the end of the world. And on the other hand, if you're spiritual, you think Mashiach's coming. So it's like the pasuk that it says, it's neither bright light nor thick darkness. We don't know which one it is. But the Rashi tells us, and the prophet from 2,000 years ago is saying, no, it's Mashiach's coming. Don't be confused. However, the sages have said in Masechet Pesachim, what does this pasuk mean? The light which is insubstantial in this world and insignificant and slight compared to Olam Haba. Meaning that the light that we experience in this world, that when we have a paradigm shift, when we have a transformation, all of a sudden we experience Hashem in a very, very deep way. So the Gemara is saying that this pasuk is talking about those perceptions that you have. That when you get to Olam Haba, that no matter how bright that light is, it's not bright and it's not thick. It's nothing compared to that. It's a very, very faint perception compared to that. We see therefore in the world to come, when people will merit a greater perception of godliness, bavadai for sure, they're going to look back on whatever they perceive the Shem is down here and be like, oh my gosh, it was nothing. I had no idea what was going on. Even if you reach the level of tzaddik yesod olam. So he says that on that front, that for sure people are going to continue to do teshuvah when they get to Olam Haba. Because they're going to be doing teshuvah on their perception, which was limited here. And therefore, is a very deep thing, by the way, that comes out of this. Every single time that you have a higher perception of godliness, you're really entering, so to speak, Olam Haba in that moment. And then when you look back at all your prior perceptions and they look like nothing, that's a microcosm of the collective experiences from now until then. Because the Rizal says Olam Haba is not some future existence. It's constantly coming. So every single time that you have a greater perception of Hashem in your life, it's like you have actually died and passed away and been born again in Olam Haba.
That's why you have to be happy when you have a certain state of happiness.
100%.
So when a person is sins, he does true in sins.
Yeah.
At that what point he goes from sins now on actual away from the sins now. He's not talking about the sins, but actual perception of Hashem.
Yeah.
When is that
take place?
When does that take place? When does he know that, hey, listen, it's not going to take it? Does he forget about all the sins he did already? All of a sudden, he's a new person now. He forgets about the old sins, and now he's talking about the perception now, or he does both.
So the truth is that all of the avera that you did become mitzvot, and they become the reason for your perception of Hashem. So it's not just that they go away. The whole essence of a Baal Tshuva and the beauty of a Baal Tshuva and Hashem's rachamim and compassion is that no matter what we did, that when a person desires to do the right thing, then he actually has more mitzvot than a person who never did anything wrong. And those mitzvot are actually what cause your perception of godliness. So in effect, when you do teshuvah, your averas become the launching pad for the revelation of Hashem. Right, because you found Hashem even from that place. Yes, Agitra, very good.
We should start talking about it.
Yeah.
We should stop talking about it because we already did tshuva. Now we should do perception of Hashem.
If you're onto it, yes, but even when you look back at those things that you did previously, that's also going to take on a new understanding in your mind because we're learning that we're doing teshuvah on perception. That's the essence of Rabbi Nachman saying. So even for instance, let's say when I first became Baal Tshuva, so now I'm thinking about some of the things that I used to do, which I cannot say publicly. And at the time, I'm like, oh man, I wish I didn't do those things. Let me go wrap tefillin. I didn't feel anything from it because that was my whole life. What do you mean? But now, like when I think about it, I cringe. And I'm sure like a few years from now, if I thought about it again, I might just faint. So your perception of reality is constantly changing. So you're doing teshuvah on perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
So even now, whatever perception you have right now, Bezrat Hashem, a week from now, it's going to look very, very small compared to the perception you have then. So you'll do teshuvah on that perception as well. And he says like this, and this is how we honor Hashem in both worlds. Ki zavicha yetzahi hateshuva rishona, because the slaughtering of one's Yetzirah, this is the first step of teshuvah. And then afterwards, when he talks about it to Hashem, and he has remorse over it, then he has done teshuvah on both accounts, in this world and the next world. And he has kavod Elokim. Now there's a pasuk that says, I kept silent when you did these things. And so you imagine that I was Eya like you. I will rebuke you and I'm going to lay it right before your eyes. That pasuk that says, I will, you thought I was like Eya. So we know that the word Eya is actually a name of Hashem. And it's corresponding to the Keter. So listen to what Rabbi Nachman says. And we will finish for tonight. And this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says when he says, these things that you did and I was silent. Dimita hayot eya kamocha. It appeared to you I was like Eya. Ki adam ayodeh shemacharish. Because when a person is silent, when somebody embarrasses him, or somebody insults him, and he doesn't respond, nase bechinat eya. We said that that's the concept of Eya. He's achieved the concept of, I want to become. I want to become. I want to experience Hashem. The first step is not to respond when somebody embarrasses or insults you. So that's the concept of Eya. Aval Kadosh Baruch Hu, but what about Hashem? That we do things all the time, and we insult him much more than he's doing to us, but he doesn't respond. So what are we going to say? He's doing teshuvah. He's in the process of Eya. He's the process of becoming. There's no concept of I will become according to Hashem. He just is. It's not relevant to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this concept of I will be. That's only for humanity, that we progress and we change. But Hashem doesn't change, like he says. So what's the reason that Hashem is silent as opposed to us? So if Hashem is not silent, meaning after you do certain things, you see difficulties and challenges come your way in your life, Rabbi Nachman says that's very, very good, because that means that Hashem cares about you tremendously and sees a bright future for you. But if Hashem is silent completely, and he stops bringing difficulties and challenges and obstacles to a person despite his actions, so then it's because he has, so to speak, kiviyachol, given up on his ability to do teshuvah. And this person will only get to experience the response to his actions in Olam Haba. She'ez mesadrin le'enav avonotav. And then he's going to set it before his eyes. V'yochiach oto al panav. And it's going to be right in front of his face. V'zeh ochicha ve'ercha le'enecha. And this is what it means that it says that I'm going to rebuke you. I'm going to lay it right before your eyes. Because this is not the world of seeing. Olam Haba is the world of seeing. This is called Alma de Shikra. This is the world of lies according to the Zohar. So what do we do here if we're not supposed to see? Like it says in Shema, that you shouldn't run after your eyes because you can't see. So what should you be doing? Doing. This is not the world of seeing. This is the world of doing. Olam Haba is the world of seeing. And everybody will see everything that they did here, but only there. And that's the reason why we're constantly frustrated. And we always feel that we're struggling and we're having difficulties and we don't understand why HaShem is not doing good to us. The answer is, he is doing good to us, but this is not the place of that good. And this is not the place of seeing. This is the place of doing. You know, I'll just give you an example. You have a fly. There's a certain type of fly. I forget which one it is. Maybe a fruit fly. It lives like one day or something. Okay, but I'm going to ask you a deep question. How do you know that that one day for the fly doesn't feel like our 80 years here?
Can't.
Why? Why not? I'll ask you another question. You ready? You ever have a lot of fun doing something? You ever notice how fast that feels? You ever notice when you feel sad, how slow time goes?
We don't perceive time.
It goes much slower, but it's the same exact amount of time. So you see, even within yourself, that there are times that time feels like it's going fast and times where it's going slow. So a fly that we know that it lives one day according to us, but how do you know for that fly that experience isn't like a whole life for us? Do we know that? So how do you know that your whole life is not like one day?
To God it is. There's no time.
To HaShem it is very good. Do you know why to HaShem it is?
He controls time.
Because
There's no time.
he's more conscious than us. Rabbi Nachman teaches that the more conscious you become, the faster time moves. That's
more conscious of reality.
yeah. So HaShem, who's fully conscious of reality, how long is our time here? One day. But that means that that's really what it is. We're like that fly. We're here for one day. And even though we go through so much in our lives, that one day is going to give birth to the day that never ends. That's Shabbat. And in the face of that, this is like nothing. You know, they came to, I think it was the Havetz Chaim, and somebody came to visit him. They heard he was a huge tzaddik. So they came to Radin in Ukraine. So Ukraine was Radin. Poland, right? Lithuania. Okay, he's from the city of Radin. He's in Eastern Europe, okay? So he was a businessman, and he was traveling to see this big Rebbe who he heard was like the tzaddik of the generation. He could be like the Mashiach, and he's going to speak to him. And he gets to this little broken down shack, and he walks in and he sees that the rabbi, the Havetz Chaim, has nothing in his house beside like a stender and a table to eat on, like a little table. He said, "Where's your furniture?" He's like, "I don't really have any." He goes, "Where's all your stuff?" He said, this is what I have." He goes, "This is all you have? You're a huge tzaddik. Why don't you have like a normal home with like normal stuff? Why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you living like this?" He was literally so shocked at how minimal this person had, how little he had. And the Havetz Chaim responded to him. He said, "Are you from here?" And he said, "No, I'm visiting." He said, "Where are you staying?" He's saying, "I'm staying at a hotel near here. I'm staying at a motel." He says, "What do you have over there?" He says, "I have a desk and a bed." And he says, "I'm also a visitor." I'm also not from here. I'm also just stopping by. So why should I get more? The guy, I'm sure, was silent. Maybe also like needed to change his pants after, right? I don't know, who knows? But obviously, you see something very deep, that by the tzaddikim, this world really is temporary. It's not for them like it's like not for them like a chizik or a musar that they learn like Torah anytime lessons. They really feel, they know that this is very like one day. And the pasuk says that at the end we're going to be all like dreamers. Why are we going to be like dreamers? Because we're going to realize that even though this felt so long, it was really very, very short. Okay, like a corridor to a wedding hall. Anybody have any questions from tonight's lesson? By the way, just to this is like the end of the grimness of this lesson. I know that this lesson has been very like heavy and dark so far. I always struggle with the beginning of this lesson, maybe for me because I'm like just sensitive and soft. But we're gonna move now Thursday night, Bezrat Hashem, or if not because of the B'dikat Chametz, next week after Pesach, into a very, very, very fundamental concept in Chassidut and Rabbi Nachman's teachings, which is the concept of Ratzov Vashov, the concept of running and returning. This is essential in Rabbi Nachman's teachings. This part is one of the most famous sections of all of Likutey Moharan, and it's very, very important that you come or you watch online so you can see how all of this relates to that, okay? Any questions from tonight's lesson?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
If
Shoot.
If a person were to do a vidui, let's say he does tefillin,
Yes.
and he does vidui, how after tshuva,
Yeah.
how is that? How does he do tshuva after doing the tefillin?
It's not about a specific doing tefillin and doing teshuvah. It's about how when you first started putting on your tefillin, you did it because you know it's a mitzvah. Now, like Abraham's saying, Bezrat Hashem, a year from now, you're putting on tefillin because you're excited to connect to Hashem so that you can feel higher levels of consciousness, which the tefillin affords. But you never thought about that. And now all of a sudden you're doing tshuva on how you first did it, almost like it's like getting a sandwich at Holy Schnitzel. And now all of a sudden it becomes like a very special moment in my day that I'm looking forward to because I'm going to receive good from it. And then Abraham says that if you have the merit and the schut, then a year from then you're putting on your tefillin not even because you want to have the fact that you know that it's a huge mitzvah and there's a huge schar and that you have higher conscience, but you're doing it simply because you want to make Hashem happy.
So you say.
So you're doing teshuvah and all those prior reasons, because in truth, even though for you then that's the highest possible thing, and like kol hakavod, it's unbelievable, but a year from now it looks much less in
So
comparison.
you say, I'm sorry, the way I perceived it. And
How little that I perceived. You know, even like last night, it was my Rebbe's yard site. They did a dinner. Rav Watkins, his neshama should have an aliyah. So I've thought about him a lot over this past year, and obviously because I do Ibodedut every day, I've, you know, from time to time, obviously, especially right after it happened, I was thinking about and talking about all my experiences with him. But last night, it like just hit me like a ton of bricks, how he was mamish an angel. And I did tshuva like after I left the the hall, and I started crying hysterically on the street because of how I didn't, even though I thought I was appreciating him, and even after he passed, how I appreciated him more, I realized that it was very lacking in comparison to what he really did for me and what he is still doing for me. And I'm sure a few years from now, that'll look like nothing compared to when I think back to what he actually did. So same concept.
Are you doing it consciously or unconsciously?
What do you mean?
Meaning, going back to tefillin.
Yeah.
You're putting wearing tefillin on, you learn there's a Rabbeinu Tam.
Yeah.
You didn't say, well, back in the day I put tefillin on, but now you just put Rabbeinu Tam, and now you have different, to learn something new. So you're growing in the mitzvah.
Right.
But are you doing it unconsciously, saying, oh, well, I was in this state, and I'm sorry if I was in the state, I'm in this state now. But if you just continue growing, is that considered as your
That's best case scenario. That's what Rabbi Nachman says you should be doing.
But you're not even talking about it, you're just growing in it.
No. You're talking about it every day in your hibodedut. You're talking about it.
If you don't say it, that means you're talking about it.
It's the concept of experiencing it and then talking about it. Everything by Rabbi Nachman has to come out of your mouth.
Mhm.
That's why you really need hibodedut. If you look at all of these different lessons and you wonder to yourself, how could I possibly do an hour? When you go through all the different things that he talks about, the value and the geula, like redemptive like quality of speaking about these things, you'll see you have plenty to speak about for now. Okay?
So was it hard to fathom for beginners?
Yes,
This concept.
for sure. By the way, every single time you learn this, any Torah in Likutey Moharan, let's say Bezrat Hashem, you continue in this path, and a few years from now, you go back to this Torah, you're going to do teshuvah on how you understood this Torah now. And a few years from that, you're going to go back like, oh my gosh, I'm like an imbecile. I didn't understand anything. And you'll do teshuvah on that also. And this is the whole entire concept. So it happens to me every single time I pick up Likutey Moharan. I'm like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking a year ago when I taught that? Same thing. Okay. Any other questions? Do you have any questions? You have to have questions. Anything. Ask me anything.
Rabbi.
Yes. Oh, Daniel, here we go. Let me get my boxing mitts on. 1 second. Okay. Hit me with the pasukim from Tanakh. Get me good.
Bereshit 3:15.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah.
It says here, I will put enemy. I'm sorry, my English is not very good looking, but try to understand. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. They will shall strike at your head, like crush your head, and you will shall strike at their heel.
Right. Yes.
There's a lot of older pasukim in the Tanakh, Ezekiel, and older prophets talk about this. Satan or the Yesehara or whatever, the snake is gonna
the
be.
Gemara says that Hashem's gonna slaughter him.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So there you go.
Perfect.
I don't really know too much about Gemara, but
yeah.
So yeah.
It says Hashem's gonna slaughter him. But what we're learning is that according to Chassidut is that after he slaughters him, the Mashiach's gonna make him do tshuva.
Mm-hmm.
This is the whole entire. The essence is there's nothing that Rabbi Nachman's coming to teach that's different than what we learn in the Torah. It's just that there's additional revelations that include what we learn. Meaning to say that if the Torah says that Hashem is going to shech the Yetzer Hara, the force of negativity in the world, he will. But that doesn't mean that that's the end. Just like within a person, there's one level of teshuvah where he leaves behind all of the skeletons in his closet. And obviously we would all love to do that. We're all begging Hashem that we should be able to leave behind all of the darkness in our life. But the Baal Shem Tov came and he taught, but that's only a stage. A higher stage than that is to be able to look back at all of the darkness and to see how actually it contributed to all the light. Mm-hmm. That it was the darkness itself that became the light. And that's higher than just the slaughtering. So this is like the mashal for this is like when you eat something, right? First you have to slaughter the meat, but you don't just leave it there. Then you cook it up and it tastes really good.
But I have a question, I mean, so
yeah.
I'm a guy that is very, if you tell me something, I'm like, okay, so if this means like this, maybe in my culture, it means, strictly what you're saying. You understand what I'm coming from? So if you say slaughter, for me, slaughter means, okay, you're done, you're gone, you're no more there.
That's right. But what's the concept of shechita? The concept of shechita in the Torah, it's a process of eating. It's not the end of the process. It's one part of the process. You slaughter the animal and then you eat it. So the Gemara says, and the Torah says, Hashem's going to slaughter the satan. But shechita is only a part of the process of eating. So in Chassidut, they teach that is true. And then after that, the Mashiach's going to eat him. And then he's going to become a part of the Geula itself, part of the redemption itself. He's going to elevate him.
So that's what we do with food.
Yeah.
We say bracha, which is
that's right. Beautiful. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Oh, wait. Okay.
You can go first. He was first. They were first.
Okay. You go first. Shlomo says you can go first.
Why would Hashem slaughter his own
Why does he cause you to?
because he put it in our path for us to reach Olam Haba. So if he put that in our paths, why would he destroy that for us?
Very good.
It's meant for us.
Oh, so this is pretty much the question of why do good people go through hard times, right? It pretty much, the question was, why would Hashem slaughter the own Yetzer Hara if we're saying he's a Malach and Hashem created him? Because the answer is his goodness is that he's time limited. The whole entire goodness of the Malach, of the Yetzer Hara, the force of negativity in the world, is that he's only temporary. But if he was forever, so he's not good anymore. He's just a nuisance. But if he's a temporary trainer, so then he's great when he's done. That's the best part of him. But he's the one who causes you to get to that place. Okay, Shlomo, let's hear it.
Okay, so I remember in a different class you were talking a little bit about patience, and I remember specifically Keter, it means crown, and Qatar comes
Right.
from the Aramaic word Qatar, which means waiting.
Beautiful.
And Rabbi Nachman says that ultimately to be excited about waiting is a higher revelation of consciousness.
Right.
And now I remember in the story that you were telling before about true tzaddikim, that story you told that he, in his house, the guy was like, oh, like there's nothing there, like whatever, and all he had was a bed and a desk or whatever, right? And so that sounds to me like somebody who's like truly excited to wait. I mean, there's nothing there. This guy's like thrilled and he doesn't need anything. So ultimately, I guess my question is, even with everything around, with technology and vehicles and music and instruments and places to go, like how do we ultimately become excited to wait?
The way you become excited to wait is through this process of growing spiritually. The more you grow spiritually, the more emunah you will have. The more emunah you will have, the more you're going to be excited to wait, because Rabbi Nachman says that waiting and faith are one concept. Because if you believe that things will get better, things will be good, then you're excited to wait for that good because you know it's going to be good. But if you don't think that things are going to change, you think that things are always going to be bad, they're always going to be a struggle, so you hate waiting. This is the reason why a person who goes through a lot in his life, he cannot wait for it to change. But a person that he understands that things will get better or that it's going to be good, so he's okay. Like, for instance, if I told you right now, a few years from now, you're going to be married, you're going to find the job that you love, you're going to be have achieved very high levels of spiritual consciousness, but it's only going to happen a few years from now. From now, for the next 3 years, you won't taste any of that. But one day, after 3 years, you're going to wake up, it's all going to be there. So now, as opposed to these next 3 years feeling like hell-free and you can't wait for it to end, you'll actually savor and be excited every single day for 3 years for that day that it's all going to flip. It won't be troublesome for you. It won't be a weight around your neck because you believe it's going to be good. So I
might tell you're crazy.
That also. But but the more that you grow spiritually, the more you believe in Olam Haba, the more you believe in the good that's coming. And for Rabbi Nachman, he believed in it so much, and he says you can believe in it so much, then it's like it's not even in the future for you, it's right now. Yeah. So this is Rabbi Nachman's teachings. It's to get you to that point, like it's right now.
And that also reminds me, going back, I think I even said it last time, to be excited. And I think it was even it might have been the same course, the same class. Anyway, to be excited to wait and to be grateful for what's to come. Thank you ahead of time.
Right.
Thank you like it's happening right now.
That's right.
That answers and that gives me clarity. Thank you.
Beautiful. Great question. Any other question from the online attendees from around the world?
I have a question, Rabbi.
Let's hear it.
Can you just maybe speak briefly, maybe it's a loaded question, I feel like it is, about the Keter and the Corona?
Yeah, sure. So the word Corona, I believe, is Latin or, yeah, and it means
Spanish.
crown.
Spanish.
Spanish. I also was going to say Spanish, but I was waiting for Daniel, my Spanish student, to come in. Okay, so Latin, I think Spanish comes from Latin, but anyway, it's a Latin word as well, and it's a Latino word. It's both. Okay, I don't know, but corona means, yes, okay. So corona means crown. The Hebrew word for crown is keter. Now, many rabbis have, since the virus started, they saw a tremendous parallel that you can't miss between the fact that this virus, which has swept over the whole entire world and has caused everybody to scramble psychologically, emotionally, financially, physically, is the same exact word for the highest revelation of godliness that's called the keter, the crown. Now, on paper, it seems hard to understand that how is there any connection? It seems like the one that we're worried about is the opposite of what the keter sounds like according to Kabbalah. However, if you know the teachings deep enough of Kabbalah, then you know that the whole ikr of the crown of spirituality, the highest revelation of godliness, is when that which looks the darkest, the most grim, the most horrifying, is actually shown to be the greatest blessing and the greatest light. So in that sense, they show that it could be, like we said tonight, that this concept of the corona, of the keter, of the crown, could all be one thing, and that this is the final step before the coming of the Mashiach. Did that make sense, Adaro?
100% sense. Thank you very much.
Okay, beautiful.
Powerful.
But I'm not a prophet, and I don't predict things, and I'm not into that. I'm just teaching you about different concepts and relating them.
Sure.
Whenever Hashem wants, these things will happen, and
Sure.
Bezrat Hashem, it should be soon.
I just wanted to hear your thought process around it. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course, of course. Any other questions from around the globe?
Yes, real quick. So his question prompted a question that I remember. So it was a recent shiri that you were doing, and you talked about the beard, the facial hair being keter, and the light, the beard being able to. Can you expound on that again? Because I was listening to that in the car, and I said, "Man, I'm gonna ask him about this tonight," and I forgot. But then Ladero said something, I remember. So.
Sure. So Rabbi Nachman says in Likutey Moharan, later on, we're going to get to a lesson where he's going to explain that there's another revelation of Keter, the crown, which is not the concept of waiting like we're learning now, but it's the concept of Rachamim, which is empathy or compassion. These two things are obviously connected as well, if you think about it. Now, this crown, where is the Rachamim experienced physically? So we learn from Daniel, who Chazal say that if Mashiach is around in the times of Daniel, while Daniel's alive, it's going to be someone like Daniel, because he had very, very intense revelations of godliness. One in which he saw Hashem, so to speak, with a beard, and the beard itself was very, very long, and it was white, and it was like sheep's wool, and it was soft, and it was long. This is the reason, by the way, why the Hasidim, you'll see that why their beards look different than other religious people's beards, besides the fact that they're very long, is they purposely will like iron them and press them and put oil in them so that they look like how they explain the vision of Hashem's. No. It's to try and Makayim the Kabbalistic. He doesn't actually have a beard. He's not physical. It's the Makayiming of the Keter. Okay. Now, it brings a revelation of godliness. That's why they do it. Okay. Now, each Rabbi Nachman explains that this concept of the beard, who is the one who has a beard usually? Who do we associate that with? We associate with older people, not with kids, right? And the older somebody is, the more we associate it with the beard, because the older a person gets, the more empathetic he becomes to his grandchildren. Meaning that when a person is a brother, so he will protect his brother with a sort of vehemence, with a sort of violence, with a sort of, right? But a father, he's going to protect him in a different type of way, more like a cub. He's going to protect his son, that he's a higher level of looking out for him it's still just as intense, but it has more of a softer quality to it. But when you get to a grandfather, then it's kulo rachamim, it's complete empathy. And it says in the Zohar that when the Jewish people saw Hashem at the Yam Suf, when he split the sea, he appeared to us like a warrior, like the ultimate warrior. And he was just slicing and dicing up the Mitzrayim to try to get us out. So at that point, he didn't have that long beard. He was like a young warrior that he appeared like. But when 50 days later, after we did Teshuvah for 50 days, and we achieved the highest levels of humility and unity, then we experienced Hashem again. And even though Hashem doesn't change, we do. Now Hashem looked different. He didn't look like a warrior anymore, because now we had achieved peace within ourselves, because now we had healed. So as a result of our healing, and not just that we left Mitzrayim, but Mitzrayim left us, now Hashem didn't appear like a young warrior. Now he appeared like a grandfather who was kulo love. He was only love and rachamim. And this is represented by the beard. So this is one element of it. Another thing is that according to the Arizal, the reason why we have the beard is because the hair represents constrictions that are for the sake of revelation. Meaning that when I want to show somebody something, I can't show it as it actually is because that's too intense. How do I begin to show somebody something? I need to first constrict that thing. And through constricting it, I show it. As just a practical example. A few years ago, when I used to work out a lot, so my muscles were bigger, okay? Now, they have faded away into oblivion. And hopefully, I hope that I've acquired more muscles of the mind in the realm of Torah.
The real muscle.
And the real muscles, the Emunah muscles, okay? But for me to have shown you, let's say, to speak, my muscles from a few years ago, I would have to first flex. And when I flex, I'm actually constricting my muscle. So on the one hand, you would think that through the constriction, I would be hiding it because I'm constricting it. However, the act of constriction actually shows the muscle that I have in potential. So too, your beard hairs or your hairs in general, they are revelations of constricted light. Now, on the one hand, constriction means Hashem is hiding, he's enclothing himself, but that concept of enclothing or constricting or flexing his muscles, that is what allows it to be seen. And it pours out of your mind and out of your chin.
Now I'm reaching right here. What happens when the hair start turning white?
So if it starts turning white, it's getting closer to the keter, right? Because usually the older that you get, the more mature you're becoming, the less angry you are, the less volatile you are, the less that your passions are heated, the more you have yeshuv da'at, you have clarity of mind. And that clarity of mind is, so to speak, now manifesting within the hairs on your head or in your beard. So as opposed to the world, which is trying to hide the greatness of the beard, we celebrate. You're looking good. Looking good, Leo. Keep it going. Just next time I come back in the class, I don't want to see the whole beard is gray because I'll know what you did. Okay. Okay. Everybody have an amazing night. Bezrat Hashem. Tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Likutey halachot. And Bezrat Hashem, you guys should have an amazing, amazing night. Hopefully, an amazing Hippo to do before we see each other again tomorrow. And we should all connect to Hashem. Thank you, everybody, for being a part. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much.
You're welcome.